Welcome to another episode of Feel Forward Friday. I'm Malesela and Roche. I'm with my co-host.
Roche.
And we do, again, as you see, we're sitting next to each other today. It means we have a guest, a visiting, what do we say, a friend of the show. He's back to tell us another interesting story.
Yeah.
And
he's got this interesting story.
He does have this interesting story. Yes, and you want to introduce yourself again?
My name is Vuyile and like Mali just said, I'm a friend of the show with a lot of stories to tell, I guess.
Hopefully they're not lies.
I hope so. No, there's a lot of embellishment on podcasts.
So again, guys, remember how this works. Today is a bit different, but how it usually works is that Doc comes with a story, I come with a story, we dissect the story and how these entrepreneurs or businesses blundered, and we then go into lessons learned.
Yeah.
Now, today, again, it's different because we have a guest. It will be focused mainly on one main story and a whole roundtable discussion around this specific story and this specific issue that led these guys or this business to, or businessman or businesswoman to then fail. Yeah. So again, remember, like, subscribe, and share, and comment, and share with your friends. Again, let us know what else you want us to talk about. This today's story is it's something that is close to home, Doc.
I think I'm looking forward to today's story. I've been researching it, I've been reading about it, and every time I'm like, there's no way this happened, right?
Yeah.
But I think what brought this up also was from one of our episodes that we have done about local story.
Yes.
Mamkhize,
yes.
Royal AM. And I think last year in one of our last episodes, I alluded to the fact that it's going to be an interesting story to follow this year.
Yeah.
Because the net is closing.
Yeah.
In terms of,
do you want to give us an extension, Doc, on what's happening?
Yeah. So as a refresher, there's this entrepreneur from KZN, who shot to prominence, in the construction space.
Yes.
And she's been doing relatively well in that space. And I think, and I'm definitely sure people in KZN, they know her quite a lot. So us being outside KZN, we didn't really know her until, when we spoke about this, when we were talking about if it doesn't make sense. We did this episode on soccer, on buying a soccer. And you said you want to buy one.
100%.
And there's this thing about, we dissected the business model.
Yeah.
And we said, as is in South Africa, it doesn't make sense to own a soccer team.
Yes.
But then the question was, why would you want to own a soccer team? And pretty much like how rich people spend their money. It's pretty much how, or why they buy a Lamborghini, a yacht, an island.
Yes.
and a soccer team.
Yeah. You had to go to the island. That's next level.
I might as well just buy a soccer team.
If I have an island.
I have an island, a yacht, a
what else can
jet.
I spend on? Yes, I get you.
And sort of it was sort of like a way for people to get to know who you are.
Yeah.
Like we didn't know Abramovich before he bought.
True,
Chelsea,
that's true. That's fair.
There's
many people we didn't know until they bought.
Until they bought soccer teams. So it was like, they say there's this thing. I don't know if we discussed it. Say, if you are a billionaire and you want to be a millionaire, own a soccer team.
Is it? I've never heard of that. Okay, in South Africa.
Well, globally.
Dog, I
promise you. They say if you want to move from being a billionaire to a millionaire, own a soccer team. Right?
Is it?
Yeah. Apparently, that's how.
Those English Premier
and it's an international thing, actually. I mean, I read it in one of the stories, one of that book that we spoke about.
Okay.
Yeah. So anyway, that's how we got to know Mamkhize.
Yes.
Right? Well, I got to know him. I don't know. Probably other people have known him before. And because she bought this Royal AM team, and there's this joke that goes around that it was actually her son was
Yes.
saying, you know, mommy, I want G-Wagon and
Yes.
I want a soccer team.
And I want to play in the Premier League.
Yeah, I want to play in the Premier League,
I
but
don't mind, I'll buy you the soccer
I'll
team.
buy you a soccer team
To play
you
in the
know?
Premier League, yeah.
And then there was Andy Lempisani, Royal AN,
Yes.
Royal Andy Lempisani, right? And obviously, fast forward, things unraveled.
Yeah.
With Royal AM, there were tax issues, legal issues, that they were not paying taxes, and there was a whole thing. We spoke about the business model. There was a whole thing that there was a municipality in one of the municipalities in KZN sponsoring
Yes.
the team.
Yeah.
And that municipality by itself was not financially.
Yeah,
doing
and
very well.
how is the municipality in the first place sponsoring a
Yeah.
soccer team? Eh?
But I mean, closely linked to Mamkiza has been the fact that she's very close to, some of the
Political,
key politicians,
yes. In
and that's
KZN,
how,
yeah.
in KZN, and some people are alleging that that's how she probably got tenders. 'Cause,
Yes.
a whole lot of other tenders.
Yes, yes.
And that's how she managed to build her
Oh,
wealth.
well, yeah.
So obviously, with the tax issues coming, they had to then liquidate
Sure.
the team, and obviously, once the liquidator is in charge, as the owner, you are out. And they obviously need to cover the tax bill. I think it was about 40 million. Wow. All right. 40 million, and obviously they sell the assets and they raise the funding.
Wait, 40 million for what? For tax?
For tax.
No, it was much more.
It was much more.
It was over 200.
Is it?
Over 200.
Yeah. It was over 200. Let me just.
But how much did the team? Because I know the
They
recent
bought it for
develop-
60 million, I think,
60 million.
for the rights
Who did they buy the rights from?
from Celtics.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they bought. I'm saying right now with the auction.
Oh no, I don't know how much that is
Yeah,
now.
because I
How
think
much that
somebody's.
is. They're bidding for it. Yeah.
Yeah. No, the bid was done.
Oh, was it?
The auction was done. There's obviously some controversy to say the person who won the bid was supposed to transfer the money, and that has not been done. But that's where we are in the story.
Okay.
That it's at that auction stage where they're auctioning it off. I saw something along the line that she's not happy. Something along the lines that she knows next time who to invite on the table. Some people cannot be trusted.
I like the fact that at
blah,
least
blah, blah.
she's feeling forward.
But you mean you would,
Yeah, lessons learned.
Next time, I will not allow these people on the table.
but I would have thought the first thing is to take accountability.
Doc, you owe tax. You didn't know how much you needed to pay. Now she's paying it. She'll get back on her feet.
Yeah.
And she'll fail forward.
No, I'm sure such people will bounce back.
Yeah.
But I think what one of the things probably is because the ANC is no longer as strong as it used to be in the province.
Yeah.
And chances are the people that she used to have a close
Yes.
relationship with are out, and there are new
Yes.
people in, and that might also affect. I mean, it's pretty much the story with entrepreneurs that
Yeah.
rely on patronage.
Yeah.
That once the party that you relied on is out of power,
One election away from.
yeah,
losing
you're one
everything.
election away
100%.
from losing everything. And I think that then is a great segue into the story that we're going to talk today.
Yeah.
Right, with that. Let me not introduce the story.
Yes.
Let me.
Yes.
Let
Give it over to
our
and just
esteemed
on
guest.
that. It was 40 million tax bill that she had
Yes,
to pay
40
immediately.
million. Yeah.
Immediately.
Okay.
Yes. But I think it was a bigger thing, and yeah, I see that now that she is completely out now. It means someone did obviously bid for
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Okay,
no,
it's
she's lost there. Once the liquidators come in, it's as good as gone.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
as good as gone because you
Okay.
don't have,
Faction.
option as to how this thing goes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay. Do you wanna introduce
Right,
the
yeah.
story
Yeah,
around
no,
this?
go
Yeah.
ahead, go ahead. So today we're going to talk about. I know. It seems like I'm the guy they call to talk about India. but we're going to talk about another Indian tycoon, industrial giant, with ties to the state and those allegations and how they sort of unraveled the individual in question. So we're going to talk about Gautam Adani. You might not have heard of him, but he is the founder of the Adani Group, a business that, funny enough, I was actually while I was researching the topic, preparing for today's episode, I saw that he's also like the Ambani family. They all, and the Tata family, if I remember correctly. I stand to be corrected, audience, that they all come from the same province.
Gujarat.
Gujarat.
Yeah.
And funny enough, Gujaratis, so just like we have Pedi people, Tswana
Yes.
people,
Yeah.
Indian people
Yes.
have different ethnic groups.
That's
For
probably
those
where
who
the
didn't
Prime
know,
Minister is from.
He is. Modi is
from
Gujarati,
Gujarat,
and so Gujaratis have like a reputation, a worldwide reputation. Like, for example, if I remember correctly, in the US, they've sort of like monopolized the motel. Like, you know those motels you see in the movies. They've sort of cornered that industry. They started in the
the
70s,
US.
yeah. So they immigrated in the 70s bit by bit, and bit
Almost
by
like
bit
what the
they ended up.
Portuguese in here, fruit and veg in South
Yeah,
Africa.
like the Greeks with
as well,
restaurants and
yes.
so on. So they did a similar thing
okay.
with the motels industry. It's like Patels and all of those
Yes,
guys.
yes.
They've sort of cornered that industry.
But is this the Adani Group? Or?
No. Just generally
Okay.
speaking,
Yeah,
that
Gujarat.
Gujarati
Ah.
people, Gujarati people have
Yes.
like a world renowned for having like an entrepreneur's spirit. That was just a side note, little nugget.
Okay.
But back to Mr. Adani. So Mr. Adani was he came from a family of a middle class family in India. His dad sold textiles. But he then branched off. He went to, I think it was Mumbai, to go and start a business. You know, he gets into business, to get into the diamond trade, if I remember correctly. And then from there on, he branches out. He builds himself, establishes himself in the business industry. He ends up owning a port. And that port becomes the foundation that he builds
Builds all
the
his businesses on,
Adani
yeah.
empires. It's I forgot the name now. I think it's Adani Ports and Special Economic Zone or something like that.
yes.
So that becomes the foundation, the
Yeah.
bedrock on which he builds up the other businesses. And then there is, as we know, the controversial relationship that he has, because throughout his rise to power, to wealth and then status and success in business, it seems to run parallel with the rise of Prime Minister
Yes.
Modi as well. Like there was even a photo actually in one of the photo. It looked like it was the noughties, judging by the camera pictures, where a younger Prime Minister Modi is in his plane. And funny enough, there's another during his election campaign. He actually had made a show to there's another photo where he's climbing onto a plane with Adani branding on it. So it's evident there's a relationship between
Yeah.
the two of them.
Yeah.
And so we see this symbiote, this seemingly not explicit but implicit and very explicitly implicit, if there's such a thing, relationship between the two, where one rises, the other seems to rise. And so he wins contracts, including one for a major port that he supposedly didn't have the ability.
Mundra
it is-
Port,
Yeah,
was
Mundra
that?
Port. Yeah, I
Yes.
think that's the one it was. I forget the names. And then he also later on he wins the rights to administer airports in India, which is
Yes.
significant because as we
Six
know,
of them.
also 6 major airports in 6 major cities.
Yep.
You know,
With no
and-
experience.
no experience. He's never done it before. It's like me going to the government saying I can build Owar Tambo for I can run Owar
But you
Tambo
can.
for you
It's just that
guys.
it's
You
not
know?
you alone that's gonna do it.
Yeah, but 6 at the same time.
At the same time, all of India's major airports is effectively he won
rights,
the tender to administer those airports, and so he also has a tender to basically redevelop and gentrify the biggest slum in the country. It's Dharavi slum in.
Can I just ask, and this is just me asking, all right? Who do you think then, Doc, has the right to build something like that in India? Chances are there's no one that is able to do that.
That's a good point, because like to your point, India is basically catching up in terms of all of this infrastructure.
And
So
because
what
he has a
you're saying,
port, he at least has experience in that logistical.
sense. Yeah,
You know what I mean?
logistical-
Look, I mean, I hear that. I don't have an issue with that. It's like World Cup 2010
Yes.
in South Africa.
Yes.
Right? And there's construction companies.
Yeah.
And you give Marion Roberts the development of all the station, soccer stadiums.
Yeah.
For me, that's like, there are other players.
True,
And-
but
and I
that's a
think-
subcontract, right?
Well, yes, there is that, but I mean, I think on paper you want to be. I think there's a risk in giving all 6 airports to
Yeah.
be managed by one family.
Yeah.
There's-
Well, one business.
One
We say
business.
family, yes, they're
Family,
family,
yeah.
but it's
But
one
business.
business.
Yeah, one business.
Yes.
I think the risk is obviously it's anti-competitive. Obviously.
Okay.
But I think also there's a whole, succession issue. Should something happen with that family, right? You are basically putting 6 airports in danger. Should something happen with one family?
And to
right?
Doc's point, they do say he had a reputation for being very aggressive in
100%.
Yeah, pursuing growth
Yeah.
strategies, which
Yeah.
in infrastructure intensive industries, especially the ones he operates
Yeah.
in, ports, energy. I think he's in
Yes.
as well. Infrastructure projects. It's very risky because those things don't pay off the moment you build them.
Sure.
It takes a bit of time for them to.
But
pay
also
back.
from a risk management point of view, you want to diversify.
And I hear you. And look, I agree with you. I'm just playing devil's advocate in
I
all of
get you,
this
I get you.
to say that even if, because the thing is, it is risk, but the thing about what you call opening each airport also to any other business, let's say, to tender for and whatever. Is that not also a logistical risk for the government as well? Or a logistical nightmare where the one airport is run this way, the other airport is run that way, but if it's one company, there's a standard.
Yeah, obviously from a project management point of view, you obviously want to have a blueprint.
Yes.
right, to sort of say, this is the minimum
Yes.
that all these airports should have.
Yeah.
Right? And you monitor that. But obviously as to what the maximum can be achieved, you leave it open to the managers who are owning those airports. And at least you look at, for instance, OR Tambo, it's slightly different to Kinshasa. It's slightly different to
But aren't those different in a sense that, in fact, aren't they managed by the
AXA.
Yeah,
AXA,
AXA. Yeah.
AXA.
AXA is a
manages
government
them, yeah.
entity, right?
Yes.
So it's pretty much still owned by government. Now you can imagine if AXA decides we are actually
Opening it
Does-
up, yeah.
Don't they subcontract?
Yeah,
Just
they
for
do.
interest sake?
Yeah, they do.
AXA do,
right? But
subcontract.
AXA is the management
Yeah,
company,
no.
right?
The
So-
buck stops with them, basically.
Yeah,
Now,
yeah.
in this sense, then it stops with
stops with
Adani.
Adani Group, yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Let's continue.
So,
yes?
so look at it this way. You have the Oppenheimers,
Yeah.
right? Who they get to Artambo. They have their own customs check-in terminal,
Yes,
not like everybody else.
100%.
Right.
Animal farm.
So you can imagine how that can actually, if OR Tambo was purely private, right? When it's not, talk about the Indians and airports, the Lanseria landing of the Gupta.
Not
wedding.
Lanseria.
Not Lanseria.
It's Waterkloof. Yeah, it was
Waterkloof, sorry.
Waterkloof, yeah.
Waterkloof.
Yeah.
And how controversial
Yeah,
that
yeah,
was.
yeah.
to
That was
support-
stupid for me.
you know,
But anyway,
So, you can imagine if Waterkloof was privately owned, then there wouldn't be a problem.
Yes.
But, it would be, everybody can just land and do whatever they wish. If the airport is yours, for instance.
well, true, but you still, I'm sure there's standards that the government would have put in the tender briefing.
No,
as well.
for sure.
Yeah. Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
So then he rises, he rises and he becomes one of India's royalty, but
Yes.
in the sense in that he's one of he's mentioned alongside Reliance Industries, Tata, and
Reliance is the one that the Ambani
Yes,
brothers.
Reliance is the Ambani is Mukesh Ambani.
Yes.
Yeah, Mukesh Ambani because
Yes, so
there's
you
a-
must
yeah,
say-
we
Oh,
have
yeah,
to make
of
the
course.
distinction.
Yeah,
we have
no.
to make the distinction
Yeah,
because
oh,
one
man.
was not so
I can't-
one was
I
not
can't
so
even
great.
believe those brothers. But anyway.
And then then COVID happens and people have a lot of I'm assuming people have a lot of time to research and see how things are, and that's when he rises to prominence outside of India because he's very aloof. He doesn't he was said to not live a very lavish lifestyle. He wasn't as outwardly as opulent as the Ambani brothers
Yes.
were, and other very very reserved. And so there was I first came across, I think it was 2021 22, there was a video on YouTube that I watched where it spoke about his rise and all of those things. And so then he comes onto the international stage. This coincides with the fact that people are seeing that growth in China is seemingly slowing down. They're experiencing population issues, whereas India is growing. There's still an opportunity, to grow exponentially. So it's the ideal conditions for somebody like Gautam Adani to come up, and then they detail his rise and so on and so forth. But once you get onto the center stage, with attention, comes
before you go on, I mean, I saw something. I mean, it blew me away that at the beginning of COVID, he was worth 10 billion. Within 3 years.
There was a time, even less. There was a time when he was, because when I saw that video, it was 90 billion at that
90
time.
billion.
So it was at the beginning, from
2023.
to
That's when the
about
video came
90.
out,
Yeah,
yeah.
and then by the time the video comes out, he was about 142 billion.
billion. Within it, how? Yeah, like, I mean, really.
It's incredible.
100 billion.
But don't you think also, because I see some of your, he had all these things. I mean, the coal mines that he got in Australia, Indonesia, from 2016
and the construction projects that were also in
that got
various
him that
countries
far.
as well, outside of India.
Yeah, but within such a short space of time, from 10 billion to 140 billion.
When did Elon went from 2021? Elon went from what, in the double digits, billions?
It was a double digit, so about
And
215. I think it was.
Yeah, too quickly within a year.
Yeah, no. I mean, I understand with Elon, it's been coming, right? And he's been in the top 10 for a while.
He wasn't in the top 10.
Yeah, he was in the teens.
Yeah,
he was in the teens.
Yeah,
right.
right. So he wasn't. He
was
had
out
like
of the
40
top 10
billion at the time.
But during COVID,
Yeah.
But I think it also points to a discussion we can have some other time about like market cap valuations.
no, we're having it today.
Because no, because I was going to talk about how
Doug is on fire.
he is. He's on fire since from the onset.
The numbers don't add up for me.
When you look at, because there was a similar phenomenon happens, like the world gets they get really excited about a country, because
That's true.
a similar thing happened in the late 80s, early 90s with Japan. Like people talking about how Japan was gonna surpass the US. You need to get into Japanese, and especially with real estate. Japanese real estate was the en vogue thing in the late 80s, and then it all crashed later on. So I think there is that
with India.
That with India. India was at this point as well, where people thought, okay, it's looking like Japan,
and
China,
it's obviously, I was about to say, even China at the time, think of it, Doc, it was when a lot of manufacturing was moving out of China because of Trump's 2016 tariffs and everything else.
And China was developing to the point where it didn't seem feasible for them to continue with that whole cheap labor.
And it was going to be very expensive anyway. So might as well go into India, because they have the next best thing.
Because already the textile industry had already gone out to, I think, Indonesia, Bangladesh, and so on.
Okay, so and I think for me it still comes back to what is this 140 billion? What is it really? Is it market valuation based on?
I think it's projection. Yeah, it's more projection.
I don't know if you project, because I mean, how do you project how much someone is going to be worth unless the assets they have are worth
that much?
Because I don't think the assets at the time were. I think you're betting on the same thing with like the scalability of the operation.
But also think of it this way. Remember at the time, when everything went up for him, wasn't it when Putin also started going into what's his name?
Ukraine.
And a lot of coal was then being bought from South Africa, from all of these other countries.
Yeah, then they ship it to India, and then it would go.
And he had all the other places in Australia, Indonesia, coal mines that he was probably doing. So all of these, I think, just happened to have all at the same time,
storm,
right? Yeah. Exactly, for him to get that run.
I mean, I accept that. Valuation is a perception, right?
It is. It's what people think, and a lot of things go into.
But anyway, let's go.
Like WeWork, famously.
Kind of work. We must actually do a WeWork story.
We actually haven't, funny, and we've talked around WeWork, but never really about WeWork.
Okay. All right.
So then we, as we know, his company, the Adani Group, the value skyrockets to the point where Mr. Adani becomes the second richest man in the world.
Yes.
In fact, was slightly above Jeff Bezos because they were both on, like, at the time, $142 billion, some 142.8, I think, to be
And number one was Musk.
Yeah, then number one was Elon Musk, yes. And then a lot of people were skeptical of this because they know that the industry that he works in, growth doesn't happen that fast. And it's easy. It's relatively easy to gauge when in infrastructure heavy, industries, whether this person has the infrastructure to back up the valuation of.
So it's a sustainability thing, yeah.
The sustainability and whether.
Can you check where is he now in the list?
I think
the other
his
day,
number.
actually.
It's
number-
60. It's 35, right? With about 60 billion.
Yeah, Ambani is 90. He's 60 something billion, and he's number 21.
21, not 25. Yeah,
Because Ambani was like 19 as well.
So he's still there.
Yeah, no, he's not. He's not broke. He's not broke.
Yeah,
He's not broke.
Yeah.
So hear this, nah? So I was just checking here. So it says in 2022, Adani companies had a combined valuation exceeding 200 billion, making him Asia's richest man. That's in 2022. And then it says the key strategies behind his growth was government-backed industry infrastructure player, debt-fueled expansion, political connections, and then vertical integration. By controlling ports, power, coal, logistics, and infrastructure, Adani created an ecosystem where different businesses supported each other.
So they would sell coal to this
Yes.
other, and that will
Keep
touch
it in
on
the
to
house,
why that's
dog.
So-
that's
so-
significant because then we'll
Yes.
touch into why that's
So I hear that, and I think for me, it still comes back to he's the Mamkize to the power 20.
absolutely yes,
because
yes.
all these things came because of patronage, right? It's not that these things came because there was a shift in the market and boom and
Yeah.
whatnot. It's because he was obviously
No, that came, but the boom in valuation came from the situation.
the situation and all of those
but
things. Yes.
everything else, yes, it is more
Okay.
of a patronage kind of thing. Yeah.
Okay.
So we get to that point where he's now the second richest man in the world, and a lot of people are skeptical because people know the environment that India operated in at the time. That it's about who you know, not what you know. The opaque capital markets and all of these things. So along comes a company from the US-based asset.
Always
Is
the
it an
bloody
asset
US.
manager? Or is it a hedge fund?
Hedge fund,
Yeah, it's a hedge fund.
hedge fund.
They're in that space called Hindenburg Research. So Hindenburg Research, for those of you who don't know, they are like they go into companies, they do the whole forensic accounting thing on companies that they don't think should be worth what they, and that's how they make their money through releasing reports about the company's financial health or lack thereof. Famously, Enron was one, and they didn't do it, but a famous example for those of you who might be a bit older. I was 6 years old at the time.
Doc.
Doc, you said it, not me.
I'm just asking. Doc,
I
if he
did
knows.
the case study at Enron.
That's what was in university, right?
That was it.
I was in preschool. But
as an audit case study. So yeah.
So part of Enron's fall was actually due to like a forensic short seller, is what I'll say.
So what these guys basically do is they look at the numbers,
The numbers,
They don't make sense.
and
the
the
financial
like,
performance. They look at because numbers can be massaged, right?
True.
So, but even though the numbers are massaged, you are able to pick up some discrepancies.
Yeah.
especially with conglomerates that
Yeah.
have subsidiaries, because
Yes.
what similar thing to if you remember the Ellerines, that group, they were
Family,
doing
yeah.
something similar where one company would lend to another, and then they would say that
Intercompany
is
transactions, yeah.
So a lot
But
of
is that bad?
It's not bad in essence, but what usually happens with intercompany transactions is they're not happening at market fair value.
Fair value. So they'll overvalue, and that's when it becomes a problem.
So I give you, it's
Okay, I
like
get
giving
that.
your brother a loan.
Yes.
And not charging him.
To go do something.
Yeah,
like a
but
training.
you're not even charging him market-related interest
Yeah.
rates, for instance.
Yeah.
So it's a family discount type of thing.
Yes.
So that's where
And it's not fair,
It's
obviously.
not fair.
Yeah, I get you. I
Yeah,
get you.
yeah. And then you can also say no, but I lent this person 50 rand, and you value that at 100 rand.
Yeah.
Yes.
For example, and that's when it becomes, and a lot of companies have done this
Yeah.
to their detriment. And so, Hindenburg Research makes these allegations that.
This is when it's at its peak.
Yeah, this is at its peak. You know, people are hailing.
There'll always be somebody who's like, no,
But it makes sense, or someone must ask
they
questions.
say the tallest nail attracts the hammer.
Yes.
Yeah, and he was a superstar, you know, at
Yeah.
this point, you know, everybody was like,
Asia's
Asia's
richest
richest man.
Yeah.
Look at how he did it, you know, he came seemingly out of nowhere, self-made, he doesn't come from, you know, a family that's wealthy, this and that. You know, and so, but then they do this, and then they make the profit for the audience. They make a profit from a process called short selling. Where you make very roughly put, you make a profit by betting that a stock will go down, and then the difference between your position and the amount that it went down by is the profit that you make. So they put a short position, and then they released this report. It came out of nowhere.
There was
in
a whole
January
Twitter
2023.
thread.
Yeah, I know it was in. There was a Twitter thread. Then the report comes out with like a few pages worth
Yeah.
of bullet points alone.
Yeah.
You know, that explains what they did and what they were trying to do. And just to summarize, it's quite long. Effectively, they were saying that Adani not only profited from their position, their favor, the favor that they found with the Indian government, but also the fact that this was effectively a family business that was
Yes.
that was a danger to the Indian economy because it's this massive corporation that's being run like a family business with family members who have sketchy past. You know, one of his brothers had gotten in trouble with the authorities for financial conduct, and then they were also related party transactions. But not only that, but also family transactions where they'd use offshore companies to purchase Adani stock to drive the price up. And then also
So stock manipulation,
market
excessive debt, accounting fraud as well.
where and funny enough, they're saying that one of the people who worked with, I don't know if it's one of Gautam's brothers, had also been involved in the 1MDB scandal. If you haven't heard of that,
1MDB, is it the one in
Malaysia,
Yes,
where
I've
there
heard
was
that.
this investment vehicle that was actually being used.
We must actually do that story.
That would also be a great
Yeah.
story. So you see so many great
It's
stories.
part of
here.
that other lady as well. The Malaysia. Is that in Malaysia?
No, it was a guy. It was a guy. It was a
Yeah.
guy that funded. Ironically, he funded the Wolf of Wall Street.
Yeah.
So Martin
Oh, wow.
Scorsese,
Yes.
Martin Scorsese wouldn't have been able
Yeah.
to he couldn't get funding for it. So because this guy was friends with the guy from 1MDB, Jolo, was friends with Leonardo DiCaprio, he funded the movie. And so we have Wolf of Wall Street.
And
because of
even
the
in
COVID
that
scandal,
story, the president also is
It's involved, yeah.
Is
The
involved
president
in that
at the
as well.
time,
India.
yes.
Malaysia.
No,
Oh,
Malaysian
Malaysian
president.
president.
So,
Okay.
so one of the guys was involved with 1MDB. Was Hindenburg alleges that this guy was helping Adani's family members, you know, commit accounting fraud, move money around, and effectively pump up, you know, the value of the Adani Group and its subsidiaries. And so this obviously is very problem. And then they were saying that they were dodging, you know, SEBI, which is like a watchdog in India that watches like a lot of these corporate, like for corporate crimes and so on and so forth. So they were dodging that through these people, through all these opaque. Some of the entities were registered in Mauritius, in the UAE, and a variety of tax havens as well. Where they could then conduct these activities, and that family members were actively involved in ensuring that the price, the share price of the Adani Group was a lot higher than they'd represented, and this was scathing. and curiously, Doc, to your point, I know you taking us back to the core of the issue, which is patronage. Is that not long after, it was almost I think, was it a week or was it a very short time, a report, they released a response 468 pages long.
Talk about diversion.
Yeah.
Let's see if you can read this.
Kill them with all the words.
Where they they go in and they say, no, this is not true, but the wording is that it didn't seem like this was a company telling the people that no, this seemed like it was a government telling, because the wording was very much, this is an attack on India, this is an attack on the Indian economy. People don't believe that Indian people can
which is fair. Why would
prosperous.
it be like that, right? The reason is, I mean, you think of something like that is, you're basically saying this person is in bed with the government. What does businesses all over the world start seeing? That no, you can't come bring business in there. Apple and them now start thinking, Mara, putting business in here is going to hurt us because we don't even know if they're going to give it to someone that doesn't even know what they're doing.
And to play devil's advocate here the thing is, what most I think I would say most Asian success stories have an element of public and private. Having very close relations.
I think not
Look
even
at the Chaebols certainly did. Japanese corporations did. Taiwanese corporations. There's always been a close relationship between business and
I think for me, the issue isn't. I mean, as a defense, they will say that. Right?
Yeah.
But I think you still need to come back and address the issue at hand, which is this transactions legit.
Okay. No. From that point of view, yes. Yeah.
And I think obviously in what they're trying to do is, when you try and reprimand somebody, right, and they come and say, but I know I'm not your favorite. Like, what does that have to do with what we're talking about now? I know you never liked me.
You've never liked me. And that's what they were saying. And you've never liked my family.
You never liked my family.
When you are the one who they're talking. We're not talking about your mom or your dad. We're talking about you and what you did.
And I think, and this is, when I listen to this story, it's so interesting how it's as if these people read from the same script. Even in South Africa, when politicians are being found with their hands in the cookie jar, and the law is supposed to take its course, and the defense has always been, but this other race has been doing it. When we do
they'll
it,
always take you back to ISCO and Telcom and all of that.
State capture. Oh, there are other people who have captured the state. Why us now?
No, what about the Oppenheimers?
What about the
and
Oppenheimers?
and all of those people?
It's always the same. Okay, I hear that, but let's talk about this.
We don't want to talk about that, dog.
We
want to talk about the overall
picture. You're not telling the full story.
It's not one-sided, dog.
Anyway, they racialize the issue, but anyway.
So these are incredible allegations. In fact, Hindenburg, I think they have an interest in this. You can't separate the fact that they want to profit off of this, and they say this is the largest corporate scandal in world history. They bill it that. They bill it as that, and it basically wipes off about hundreds of billions off of the I think it was 120
100 billion in a few weeks.
Yeah, in a few weeks, basically.
That got wrote off.
Actually,
it's actually like half of the
basically half of what it was worth. Half of what it was worth. And now the story is not so good. Now every interview they do is, but what about this issue? What do you say to the Hindenburg report? Everything was about the.
Well, I mean, you must remember. I think in that sense.
After that,
in that sense, that's who people now know you as. Because before that, we didn't even know. We just knew that was the richest person in the world, or top 3 richest people in the world, and that was it, right? You didn't necessarily know that the person. But now, I mean, if right now Bill Gates, something happens to Bill Gates, and we all find out that actually Bill Gates has been doing that's who we know him as. Because everything else, you can do good after that.
But to
We
be
won't know you for the
fair,
good.
speaking of Bill Gates, his public image has recovered quite a bit from
A lot.
I remember
Since he
that
stepped
scandal
out.
that scandal that
In
he
the
had in
2000s,
the 90s,
When they
in
hit him-
2000s,
when they smacked him with a pie.
and they had that they released that deposition and how
Yes.
blasé he was about
But
it.
all of
you
these
know.
guys are like that, right? Facebook. We were talking about it with the. Who were we talking about? Someone were talking about. Oh no, it was someone here at the office. But we were talking about how they say Mark Zuckerberg is a lizard. There's this lizard. People are actually it's so funny. But in any case, what I'm trying to say is all of them get tainted at some
They
point,
do.
and you have to kind of like recover yourself by doing something.
I mean, the last episode you gave a story of Bernard
Banana, yeah.
and how he maneuvered.
Yes.
Right? And how I think it's a thin line between being a maverick and being a con artist, right?
Sure.
I think it's a thin line.
There is.
Right?
Yeah.
Ask Steve Jobs.
Yeah, I mean, look at Steve Jobs. I mean,
Very thin line there.
there's a story. There's a story about Apple and Microsoft.
Yes.
With
With Kodak. Not
No,
Kodak,
no,
the
no.
printing machines.
No,
Xerox.
before Xerox. Yeah, with Xerox.
Yeah,
but prior
because
to
they must invented the mouse,
the mouse, yes,
and everything
yes,
else.
yes. With the graphic user interface
Yes.
and how they both copied.
And there are
Yes,
allegations
Xerox.
that some company from the UK, I think, had an idea of eerily similar to the iPod
Yeah.
as them. If
Yeah,
I
yeah,
remember,
yeah.
I remember.
Well, I mean,
reading
even
some-
now
hearing
with the Apple
something like
Watch
that,
and the
yeah.
ECG thing.
Yeah,
These things happen.
you know, and the funny part though was when Microsoft is accusing Apple of stealing the graphic
But they
user
also
interface.
create-
But they
yeah.
also and they ask Jobs to say, what's your response to this? I mean, Gates is accusing you that you stole their
Yes,
innovation,
yes.
and Jobs is
I remember that.
but it's like two thieves who break into a house at the same time, right? And one finds another one with the TV, carrying the TV. Now the other thief cannot want to accuse the one who's carrying the TV to say this is mine,
Yes.
because it's whoever came first,
Yes.
right?
But I guess the whole story was that they were designing it for Microsoft.
Yeah.
And then they realized that Microsoft anyway is designing it for the other guys.
Yeah.
And then he goes, might as well.
Look, I
let's
mean, and I guess it comes back to there's no honor amongst thieves.
Yeah,
so,
there isn't.
but I think this one is a bit. I mean, the Adani Group it's a bit worrying because you are actually not just misleading your competitor.
You're misleading the
Yeah,
public.
the public.
The public. And,
True,
and
true.
there is that added element with them because
Mara, the
they
public
are
wants to be
they-
misled.
Yeah, I know, but they are but unlike say Apple, you know, and they're not Lockheed Martin, for example,
yes.
who are intrinsically tied to government
Yeah,
government
contracts.
work, government
Yeah.
contracts, whereas the Adani Group is, you know, because what Narendra Modi effectively did was he banked India's future on the success of the Adani
But
Group
let's-
by
okay,
giving
let's be honest,
by
right?
giving him all of these major projects.
I think, and we can say all we want, dog. Every nation does that.
Look, I think
It's just that man just did it at a scale that was like amazing. But every nation does that.
and I think that's why you have your antitrust,
Laws, yeah.
laws, right?
Those things are just
Because no, man, they are
for
important.
the small guys.
No.
No, they're important,
Yeah.
but they're put for the small guys.
No, we'll get to that. I think obviously, you know, where there's because if you don't have these laws, you
Yeah.
can imagine how rampant this
Not
thing
true.
can be, you know. And you, I mean, let's take the Ambani brothers for instance, right, where Modi has given them all these Adani contracts, and these guys they fight amongst themselves, and how it can actually stifle the economy, right? So you kind of want, I mean, you know, it's happening now with, and we see it firsthand now with the US.
But
with-
that's what I'm saying. If the US, everyone is doing it, though.
no, I'm not disputing that.
Yeah.
And I'm saying there are checks and balances
It should
to
be-
make sure that this kind of thing does not collapse the economy.
You know what? And I get what. Look, that is
So,
very true.
so look at,
That's
for
very
instance, back home, you have Steinhoff,
Yes.
for instance.
Yes, and how much it hurts.
And how much people's pensions.
People's
Yeah.
You know, so you want to protect that. So
That's
so
true.
you kind of want to have the checks and balances. Are they foolproof? Maybe not, right? But you kind of want, and we're not saying it won't happen. What we're saying is, if it does happen, the damage,
That
the
is
potential
what-
damage that it can have should be minimal,
True.
right?
True.
Otherwise, if it just happens, there are no checks and balances, because we know human beings will always find a way.
Yeah.
That's human.
So here's my thing about that, Nadok, and I do agree 100%. You said that is actually what's supposed to happen. Those balance checks should be in place. But and I want to say, it's not to say it's reality. Reality though is wherever there's politics,
Yeah.
there is favoritism.
Yeah.
And the reason I'm saying that is politics thinks to the next election. They don't think to. That's why dictators for me are different,
Yeah,
because you
okay.
can't dictate.
Yeah, you
You know what I mean? Dictators are saying, Emuna, my foot is crying here.
But also the inherent, us as human beings, we are inherently biased.
Yes.
You know, even in the private sector, you know, hey, there's something about that guy. You know,
So,
you
yeah, and I think for me that's where it comes to say, yes, politicians will have their favorites. When another leader comes in, he brings his own.
100%.
I mean, you can literally see it here in South Africa, where there's a businessman of the moment. There was Tokyo Sehwane,
Yes.
Yeah.
this guy at some point, you know.
So and I think the thing for a country is you need to have checks and balances to say, should something wrong happen, the damage is not catastrophic to the economy, to people's pensions, but definitely people will have their own favorites, and they'll bring them and they'll want to push them. It's relationships, it's net worth,
Yeah.
your network is your net worth, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
People get in there because I have a good relationship with someone. But I think the main thing is, yes, definitely that's going to happen. That's
Yeah.
why you need to have tight laws.
Yeah.
Even I mean, the whole thing that you're giving this thing to six airports to one person.
One guy.
I don't think that for me is a big deal, rather than
You know,
pensions, like, for instance, you know what I mean?
why it's a big deal? It's a big deal because if you look at the Adani Group, it's highly leveraged, right?
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, I was looking at the numbers, I was listening to the numbers, they were like 100%.
leverage. Yeah.
Yeah, they're the
100%.
most of
Yeah.
No,
that's true.
There was like a graph where it showed like all of these and how leveraged, and they were like the
Most,
highest
yeah.
leverage.
Yeah,
Of
no,
the
no,
major,
100%.
yeah, these
So
major
it's a house
infrastructure
it's a
things,
house
yeah.
of cards, right? So should something happen in maybe say another unrelated
Yes, that causes them to fall.
that it causes
Or
six
if
airports
that
affected.
Hindenburg report caused a snowball.
Yeah.
Here's my
in other
question though.
areas,
Here's
yeah.
my question, because they got those airports a long time ago. I think it was back in the 2010s, somewhere there, if I'm not mistaken. And COVID happened. It's not like anything happened to them.
No.
They actually grew in value.
Yeah. No. What I'm getting at is because it's a family business, right? The risk is high because governance systems and I mean, I'm asking myself questions. Who's auditing these guys?
But I think, you know what I think, Doc, and maybe it's something that we don't necessarily understand how it works, but I think the whole the six airport thing, there probably is a governing body
No, for sure.
of aviation
It's
or
like
of
an
airports,
AXA
like an
relative
AXA for
to
them,
India.
that they have to at
True.
least go to.
True, but what I'm getting at is you're centralizing part of the economy in one family. And the risk with that is, it's the Gupta brothers, right? They will tell you if you don't appoint this person in a government, because they're becoming powerful.
Because they have effectively monopolized the logistics industry
Yes.
in the country.
And they grew in stature, they grew in power, and they're
Don't go for it all.
They're a parallel government. They talk about parallel government. They're a parallel government, right? And I think the danger with that is because these people are not voted in, they coming in, they can do whatever they want.
Yeah.
And you kind of want to have a diversified economy.
True, so that you're more resilient.
If something happens in
Someone
one,
falls, yeah.
then
Yes.
it doesn't, like
Mess
a
up the
Titanic,
whole, yeah.
mess up the whole thing. And I think for me that's where the thing is. But I mean, again, checks and balances. Who was auditing these guys? Where is there are regulations. There's a reserve bank there, I assume, which is supposed to be independent and also, have their own institute, their own investigations.
Question. But the leverage thing. So we're not actually the question. The conversation here is not necessarily the leverage that they had, right? Because companies do leverage.
All especially with heavy capex projects.
Yes, they have a lot of capex that will pay back. You know what I mean? So that's not the problem here. The problem is the fact that the government bet most of their cards on that group. And if that group, something was to happen, the house of cards is going to fall. Just like the Hindenburg reports brought out. That there was fraud, that there was all of these things.
Misrepresentation.
That wiped off half of the value.
And the other question is, because politicians live to 5 years, after 5 years there's a new government coming.
Yeah.
What is the sustainability?
I would have gotten our money, Doc.
No, I'm saying for the group.
I get you.
No, but it seemed like in passing that the government banked on a third Modi term as well.
Yeah.
Because it was also, I think, to get back to the parallels. He was at his most popular. I remember there was even a time where, it seemed like he would follow this trend of governments becoming a bit more autocratic.
Yes.
And he was sort of, there were fears that he was he was so powerful at the time that he was going to create an ethno-state and excluding everybody who didn't look like the people.
Yes,
his people,
Mm.
Hindu and so on. So he was very powerful at the time. So I don't think they were looking, to the point of patronage and thinking. They thought perhaps that Modi is so powerful now that and it wasn't going to. It didn't seem like it would change anytime soon. And he also, and to your point about the terms that you mentioned earlier, Doc, is that yes, you have 5 years, but people want to secure their legacies as well.
Yeah, true.
You want to be the guy that fixed everything, the guy they talk about in the history books as the guy who was the guy who turned India into the developed country that it is. Yeah, the Rockefeller, so to speak, like Deng Xiaoping. I'm sure Prime Minister Modi had that in mind as well. And
which is everyone's one there.
And so
not everyone, but
and so if you want to secure your legacy, you're gonna try and hedge your bet. You're gonna try and hedge and eliminate chance at all.
But that's true. 4 years. Why do you think he's doing all of this right now?
And so you'd want to pick somebody who you trust.
Elon.
And who does he trust?
Mr.
Adani.
They were getting into a technical recession now. But anyway, in the US.
They want that, apparently.
I mean, how do you issue tariffs in countries where there's the US?
No, but don't you know what is happening there? We're going all over the place. But the reason apparently he's doing that is so that he can they can get into a technical recession, right? And that is going to cause inflation. I mean, not inflation. What's this? That's going to cause interest rates to go down. Then they can pay most of their debt, the state debt, in that time with the thing down.
I saw something to that effect.
Which would be clever because
that's theory.
I don't know if it's clever. It's very risky.
In practice,
it's very risky.
But that's what I'm saying. In theory, yes, he's doing that theory. We'll see.
He's experimenting at a time where, but anyway. So let's come back to the whole thing of patronage, back to Mamkhize, back to the fact that as entrepreneurs you are building this business and you want to grow and be powerful. And part of what these entrepreneurs do is obviously, to accelerate your way to the top, you kind of want to be close to people who will give you contracts, even when you don't have experience. Because one of the things that comes out during the floods in KZN was some of the houses that were taken were poorly built, and the company that built those houses is Mamkhize. You take Royal AM for instance, and I'm not saying anyone who comes into soccer needs to have experience, but what Royal AM has shown us is precisely that people with money, they can buy themselves into spaces where they know nothing about how that thing runs.
But it was run fairly well, right?
Yeah, well, on the pitch, but
Yes.
I mean, you don't pay players on the pitch
With
cash.
money, yeah. Bonuses.
Bonuses.
For scoring a goal. 10,000.
You know? So and
I
you
shot
then
the
pick
pipe
up
on
fights
that one.
with FIFA, and you don't pay this player squad. It was just a mess, right? And partly because power does that to people. Power gives you this thing, confidence, to think that you can get into any industry.
True.
Because you have managed to make money in this industry.
Yes.
You can get into any other industry where you don't have experience. And you
Yes.
think you can copy and paste this formula that made you successful here.
And we see that.
And paste it in other things that you have no.
And to your point,
experience.
Doc, we see it very often in sports where guys who are successful in one area, they think that they can take what made them successful in business in sports.
Yeah.
Doc, listen to a Man United fan. He's talking from experience.
No, not even us actually. Funny enough, I was thinking of an NFL team where a hedge fund billionaire had bought an
Yes.
NFL team recently, David Tepper.
Yeah.
He bought the Carolina Panthers. And so he was telling GMs and coaches what to do, and it was predictably disastrous. The team was terrible. They made bad picks, they wasted picks, and he set the organization back a few years. And so now they have to make up
Build
for
again.
his they have to rebuild. And he had bought them at a time where they were just coming out of a fairly successful period. So they needed to rebuild. And so they set themselves back because the steps he had taken to rebuild were terrible. And he was obviously strong-arming his employees into making those
So
decisions.
are we now then saying that Adani got to that stage where you're so powerful that he could go into any other industry?
And I think with the backing of the government.
Yeah, he's built
that
up
has-
cash. Remember, he's
Yeah.
built up cash with Narendra Modi because he's ran like you were saying earlier. I think you spoke about how he had ran ports successfully. So you think that if this guy's running ports, he got into the energy space with coal and so on. He did that successfully. So you're thinking, if I want to leave a legacy, I'm going to pick a guy I trust, and who do I trust more than this guy?
Yeah.
And so that's
okay,
why.
Are we saying that? Because I think there's two stories here, right?
Yeah.
There's the man that built a successful company that we would think, okay, well, there's the honest side. Actually, let's put it this. There's the honest side and the dishonest side.
Yeah.
And right now we know him for the dishonest side.
honest side.
Because of the fraud. Not because he has his family running the airports or whatever, because the airports aren't failing.
Yeah, they aren't.
You know, the
failing,
ports aren't
and
failing.
he does, and a lot of his businesses were working, and they still are working.
Yeah, they still are. That's why he's
working.
still
Yeah.
at the top for
Yeah,
him. It's not like the Ambani story that we spoke about a few weeks ago,
Yeah.
where it fell apart. This is not falling apart.
No.
So its operations is sharp. It's just that we saw a blunder. The blunder here was that a report came out and told the truth of what this company
They were
actually
overvalued.
is.
And to your point, Mali, they actually, to the point of that you mentioned, you touched on leverage, right? Part of their sort of damage control was that they paid back a lot of
the leverage. Yeah,
they paid back a lot of the leverage, which suggests that they had cash on
Yeah.
hand and whatever.
They were just using
they paid
the
back a
leverage
lot
to
of
pay-
those
yeah.
obligations that they had, and as we're all saying here is that the company's still running now. Nobody's talking about the fact that everything is working. We only know them as the people who were
overvalued.
effectively doing a pump and dump
Yes.
scheme, so to speak. Yeah.
So that's the one story, right? Where there's the other story is obviously there are businesses that they are running well.
Yeah.
But the problem is now once you start conflating the two, right? Even the businesses that you are running very well get mixed in this whole shadiness.
Sure, I
Because
get you.
once we
I
start
get you.
questioning this part, to say, but
We're gonna question the
we're
other
gonna question the
parts.
other
Yeah, I
part
get
you.
as
Other parts,
well,
yeah.
and it dilutes the good work that you have done. You know, Mom Kiza can come and say, "Oh, hold on, but I've been running these other businesses very well."
Yes.
You know, and people are like, "Yeah, but there's this side of you that makes us question whether even these ones that you were doing very well, legitly, were they actually really legit, you know, in the first place." And I think that's what integrity, once you suffer integrity,
yeah.
it's one of those where you can't be half pregnant. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You can't be on the one hand, I'm legit, on the other hand, I'm not legit.
Yeah.
People like, if you're not legit, you're not legit.
Yes.
Even the ones that were legit. Like when the scorpions come and repossess,
yeah.
they don't say, okay, which ones did you get legally, which ones, they take everything.
Yeah.
And then from there, it's like, okay, whatever is left, we'll give it to you.
Okay.
So, and I think that's, once you start crossing that Rubicon, coming back,
It's difficult.
it's difficult.
Now you have to just sit back and just keep quiet and do the work.
Like Bill Gates
Like
did.
Bill
You know,
Gates
he
did.
kept- he said,
Exactly.
yeah, he said,
He sat back.
He sat back. He kept quiet, and by
just-
the
Look, guys,
2010s, we all love him
Yeah.
again.
You know what I don't...
The Gates diaries.
Yeah.
You know what? I love Bill Gates, right? I love Bill Gates for the work that he's doing in, chasing...
That's another
diseases.
story. Apparently, he's
Jesus.
just doing all of these things so that his value can be tied in that NGO. But anyway, which is
Well, I think because I think if there's a billionaire that's actually doing very well for humanity, it's Gates now, right? Like he's using his money.
Yeah.
Unlike other billionaires that we know,
Yeah.
right? But anyway,
Who are those people?
I'm not,
Tell us about those
there's
people.
one who's been crying the past 2 weeks. He's been crying
He's crying.
on
He's still the
TV.
richest man in the world.
There's a running theme on the show regarding a certain individual
Hey, and someone
who
doesn't
went to
want,
Boys High.
does it? Hey, it's as if this guys they went to the same body school. Anyway, some people are sacred cows here. We don't touch.
Second guy. Yeah, no. We don't go there. We don't go there. See, I'm even afraid to mention his name because I don't want any trouble.
Anyway,
I even forgot what I was gonna say.
I don't like to ask, dog. Now you're talking about how okay, we're talking about patronage, obviously.
Yeah. No. I was saying that obviously when the authorities come, they take everything.
Yes.
They don't make a distinction
They don't make a
between
distinction.
honest gain and
Yes.
dishonest
or
gain.
dishonest.
Yeah.
Yes.
They take everything, and your reputation is gone, is ruined. And the reason why what I find ironic is how Steve Jobs has got this angelic reputation, and Gates doesn't. And these two guys were pretty much doing the same thing.
Yeah.
Right? And why is it that Gates has got this? And I'm willing to bet that it's because Gates does not have a good PR. He's a typical nerd. He doesn't understand PR, right? While Jobs, on the other hand, he's a master technician.
He's one of the best salesmen we've
have
ever
seen,
witnessed.
right?
Yeah.
But they were peers, got into the same industry more or less at the same time, right? And there was both of them stealing. And Jobs is even open about it to say, as long as you make it better, steal. Right? Steal on. As long as we're making it better. All right? Gates doesn't have that PR, right? But they're all the same. But it's quite interesting how Gates has such a bad reputation and Jobs has got this. And I mean, people are like, if Jobs was still alive, Jobs was still alive.
Jobs is a
this
sage,
one, this Gates is a devil. I'm like, what?
Jobs is a visionary.
Visionary.
How did he ever see that?
These people are, So maybe also Adani needs to have a good PR around it. Because,
that's true. That's
maybe,
true.
And I think he is to an extent because after that, I think you see his nephews and sons, the four, the four chosen scions to run the are taking a lot more prominent roles.
Yes.
And they were sort of doing the PR. You see, like if you even a quick YouTube search will show that it's the son talking about this, the nephew talking about this. So there's an evident shift.
Yeah, in
Not
power.
only obviously there is, to your point, Doc, the honest side in that he is shifting part, doing it's a succession plan in motion. But there's also that maybe less than honest part in the sense that he knows that he shouldn't be too prominent now because you're the guy who's doing pump and dump. So we're gonna bring the kids into the forefront. The people that weren't, as involved, seemingly weren't as involved in that scheme as to become the face, of the organization.
Okay.
Is that the pot?
That is the part, dog. We can talk about this forever.
Yeah, no, we could.
Yeah,
Yeah,
especially
no.
there's the three of us. But
Yeah.
I think that let's cut it there today.
Yeah. What's
Yes.
your lesson from the whole thing?
I think my lesson mostly is more around don't oversell yourself sometimes, especially if you are in a place where you are backed by a lot of government. It's not like people didn't know that a government was supporting or he had favor with the government, right? I mean, that was just a research away from people knowing that. But don't oversell yourself on being something. Don't be in the background, basically, for me. Be in the shadows. Win in silence.
I
You
think
know what I'm saying?
I'd also say the same thing. That if you know the foundations of your success, don't do something contrary
Yeah, you know
We
what I'm
spoke
saying?
about this.
to. Don't do something contrary
Yeah.
that contradicts that, because
Yeah.
and I think people we've seen it so many times. People get comfortable
Yes.
with
Pride comes before a fall.
yeah, and then they
So-
become prideful, and then that's when things start to
So
fall
if you
apart.
steal,
because
lie low.
lie low,
I know, dog.
lie low. You know, ask Hush Puppy.
Mom Kiza, the same. I think, because to be honest, if Mom Kiza was not so loud,
Yeah.
to be
We
honest,
would have never known.
we probably would have never known. Right now, if I was to ask you who owns this soccer team, Barakenge, who owns
Sekukune.
Sekukune United, you don't know. You know what I'm saying? It means the person has enough money to run a soccer team, but you don't know who it is.
I think for me, it's the whole, you're doing well. I mean, and I believe Adani was doing well. What's with this obsession in being the top 10 richest person in the world? Because I think that's
I think, an Indian thing.
Well, yeah, sure.
It's a pride. Because Indians,
It's a prideful
Pride,
thing.
yeah.
I think I don't get that. I don't get why do you want to be the richest person? For what?
I think prominence and legacy.
I think also it's say, right? Because we come back to psychology.
Yeah.
What you call this? Maslow's hierarchy of needs say you want to be part of a something.
Yeah.
Now, who has say in that something? Whoever's at the top of that something.
True, but I guess what I'm getting at is what's your why?
Yeah, true. Yeah.
And a lot of successful people are super competitive.
Yes.
So they'll do irrational things
Yeah.
in the name of success, in
Yeah,
the name
I-
of their competitive
Yeah,
nature.
I find the whole I want to be the richest person in the world to be very vanity.
Yeah, no, that's true.
It is
You know.
shallow.
And we
It's-
spoke about it actually
yeah.
a few weeks back.
And you're not going to finish that money.
Yeah.
The next 3 generations to come, unless if they mess it up real bad.
Yeah.
If they are
They
conservative
literally
with
can
it,
live on
they can live,
interests.
And I think it then comes to the whole thing that, I was having a conversation with someone to say, the US with the whole list of these billionaires, they actually could solve all their problems if the people were willing to share. But it's such an amazing thing that where they have all the leading, biggest economy in the world, it's also an economy where people are highly debted. Average people are highly debted. Student debt is crazy. There is no affordable healthcare. Affordable housing is almost non-existent.
You can earn a decent living and live out of your car.
And live out of your car.
Depending on where you live.
People
in the
have
country,
2
yeah.
jobs, 3 jobs, just to make ends meet. And we then say this is the most successful, biggest economy in the world with a lot of billionaires. I think this whole thing, this capitalist system, that formula, for me, I think it's broken.
It's been broken.
I don't think it makes sense anymore.
It actually was never. I think it became after World War II. It worked
For a while.
for a while. From the 80s, it just started breaking. I mean,
Yeah.
though, that's again greed. That's what Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger would say, right? Is that envy is the biggest problem a lot of the time with certain things. And that's where this whole capitalism system gets broken. When there's envy, I don't want Doc to be better than me. Why is Doc better?
I want to
than
be
me?
number one.
I want to be number one. And then it feeds to, as you were saying, people that are competitive would want to do whatever they need to do. I mean, Facebook is the same. Facebook, how many kids have been suicidal and they knew about this, but they didn't say
Instagram,
anything.
yeah.
You know what I mean? All of these
And
things.
intentionally understaffing those content monitors. Why do you still have a person screening content like to a screen.
Your
Like,
AI
to
there.
this
So
age,
it's things like that that people know. Like the people that are at the top know why, and it's basically what is your why? They have their own why, whether it's a good why or bad why.
But I'm saying that why that they have is actually leading them to do certain unethical things.
Yes.
And sometimes it might even
You
land
see,
you in
ethics,
trouble.
dog. You see, ethics. Ethics
and
is
the
just like
dangers of
capitalism.
patronage as well, and how
Ethics is just.
there's a thin line in patronage, I think, between rapid economic growth and success and a huge disaster. And I think one thing we can also take from the story is the fact that you could easily go either way. You know, and it's so volatile.
Yeah.
You know, because like we were saying earlier, like this Hindenburg report could have sent bigger shockwaves under the right circumstances. And or you know, it could have never come out at all. And something else, you know, there's so many what ifs.
They could have brought it
when you
out in
bank here.
2021 when airports weren't working. So you see, this 6 months. Look, they even
Because
did
the
airports,
rumors
even
already,
during COVID.
because there were rumors already. Apparently, there were rumors already. You know, according to people in the know, that there's something sketchy about Adani's rise. You know, so imagine they came out there. To your point, that could have been disastrous. You know, so the importance of transparency and competition in public procurement, I think it was something we can take from that.
Is that the point?
That is a part talk. You can
Awesome.
take it.
So like, subscribe, comment.
Yes.
And feel free to suggest stories. And who knows, we might actually invite you to come and share your story.
Yes.
Yeah, right. I kind of get a sense that it's not the last time we see you.
Clearly, Indians. Whenever we talk about Indians, we call them in the Tata Group.
The Tata Group.
Yeah, we're coming for them now.
I think we must do the Malaysia story.
Yeah, the Malaysia story would be interesting.
The one MTP, that'll be cool.
Yeah.
That'll be cool.
Awesome. Great.
Thank you.
Guys, and next time.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Good.